Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from SMB Nation, Harry Brailsford, MSP Tech Talk, Spring Quarter 2019 End of Support. And today's special is that we have Frank Olhurst joining us in just a second. A little bit of housekeeping, as we always like to do. The next show that we have on the docket will be DattoCon, mid-June in San Diego, so we look forward to seeing you there. And then ChannelCon in early August, late July, the CompTIA ChannelCon show. Unfortunately, it's in Las Vegas this year in late July, early August, so that's not quite as fun. But we have a lot to cover today, and boy, is this a timely topic. So without further ado, we have myself, Harry Brailsford, talking to you, all the ships at sea, afternoon in Seattle in the U.S., evening in Europe, and very early morning over in Asia. And then we have Frank Olhurst, who's recently returned from an event in Dallas. Frank, introduce yourself and briefly tell us about the workflow event you were at in Dallas. We always like to kind of keep it real over here at SMB Nation.
Yes, you do, Harry. I do have to say you like to keep it real. But basically, I'm Frank Olhurst. I'm an IT journalist and analyst. And I've done a few of these with Harry, and I've been a member of all of the SMB stuff that Harry has done over the last decade or two. So we
40 years, 40 years now.
Yeah. So basically what Harry was mentioning is that I was just at an event called Workfront Leap, which is sponsored from a company called Workfront, which specializes in doing workflow automation. And what they bring to fruition is the ability to create workflows that work within other products, such as Jira and SharePoint and elements like that, to allow you to automate those workflows to reduce the amount of human intervention that is needed. This way, decisions that need to be made by humans are still done by humans, but anything else that's pretty much, a pedestrian in nature can be automated. And this allows folks to start implementing solutions such as robotic process automation, and also bring better auditing as well as better security into workflows. And that's what they were talking about at Workfront Leap. And they were demoing the platform, and it was very, very interesting. And it has some interesting implications for people in the channel. So the idea is that, can a channel partner transform themselves into a maven of workflow automation? And Workfront is looking to provide the tools and the support to make that a possibility. So that's why it was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like I say, folks, we like to kind of keep it real with what's going on. We had Mia Kate about the same time. Mia Kate Kennedy, one of our editors, was at Sage Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. She very much liked that. That's also a business and technology conversation. And then Jennifer Hallmark was at Lenovo Accelerate in Orlando, and I have a blog up on that where Rob Cato's not satisfied if you peek over at smbnation.com. So let's jump right into it. We've kind of had our welcomes. We're going to talk about the January 2020 end of support deadlines, Windows 7, Server 08. Shout out along the way to our community sponsors that make it all happen. And then finally, we're going to pump the book right at the end and answer your questions. Be sure to use the questions feature in GoToMeeting to ask your questions, and Jennifer Hallmark will periodically read those to Frank and I. So let's talk about the facts. We are talking about January 2020, and we have, for our purposes today, we have the stars next to Windows 7, Server 08, R2, and Server 08. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm not really in the mood to talk about Expression or Dynamics Nav, etc. Not quite the right conversation, but You can find this information, of course, by searching up on the Microsoft site, Windows 7 and Server 08. So, had a good conversation yesterday. Some of you may know that I do some additional media work for a Portland, Oregon network called Northwest Digital News. And we also talked about this topic. This topic is becoming top of mind because we're in arguably late May, and not only did the days start getting shorter in just under a month, sorry to bring that up, but the EOS conversation is part and parcel to that. Think of it this way. The days are going to start getting shorter in a month. Then the days start getting longer. About the time the days start getting longer, the solstice, winter solstice, this will be directly head-on in front of your car, the end of support for 7 and 08. The conversation we had yesterday, and Frank, love your thoughts on this, is, you know, I'm in Seattle. I consider myself an ombudsman to the Microsoft Corporation. At times I've been a cheerleader, but I think we do better at SMB Nation when we're an independent community from the outside looking in, and we like to poke the bear occasionally. And sometimes the bear bites back. But is this a Microsoft profit motive? I mean, imagine if you had a product, maybe you manufacture an electric car. What if you had built-in obsolescence on the battery, right? The lithium battery is already going to wear down. But what if you put a little tweak in there and had built-in obsolescence? Well, that's one way to boost your financial performance. Or is it a legitimate security concern? Or is it both? So, Frank, not to put you on the spot, we are being recorded. But your thoughts on what is end of support? And maybe you have a third category.
Well, I do actually have a third category, and it comes in the form of overall improvement to the experience. Because you know, you take a look at Windows 7, and Windows 7 did some things very, very well. And you know, it's still out for debate whether or not Windows 10 is better. And you look at it from the point of view of Microsoft learned a lot since the days of Windows 7 when it comes to usability and making, I wouldn't call it more friendly, but more quicker to adapt to from the graphical user interface point of view. And it has done a better job of hiding the things that often get end users into trouble. And it's done that by moving a lot of things back to the old days of the command line. So you can't just randomly click on things and screw up settings and things like that. You have to have a more than a little knowledge to be dangerous. So I think that's part of the motivation behind you know, this push towards Windows 10. Also, you brought up the issue of security. And if you look at it from an operational or overhead expense for Microsoft, securing 2 different OSs takes a lot more resources than just securing one. So if they can retire Windows 7 and, you know, push it off into, you know, the realm of irrelevance, they can put all of their security resources into keeping Windows 10 secure. So, I mean, that is a legitimate reason from that point of view. And finally, the whole, you know, upgrade cycle. You know, you have to admit, you know, software companies make their money off of selling software. And if you only sell it once, you only make money once. So what is the incentive to, you know, stay in business at that point in time? So there is built-in upgradability and built-in obsolescence, but I think obsolescence from the point of view of that hardware technology changes. New features go into processors or types of storage or even interfaces. And to keep pace with that level of innovation, the operating systems have to evolve as well. The question becomes, are you better off trying to, you know, dress up an old operating system or putting your resources into developing a new operating system.
Well, and Frank, you raise a valid point, and then we'll move to the next slide. I've done a lot of work as a vendor to Microsoft, and again, full disclosure, because I'm an analyst, I'm not a shareholder. And the OEM group, I did a fair amount of work for back in the SPS days and beyond, and I was actually on the team for Windows XP migration for the Dell OEM relationship. And you might imagine Dell and other OEMs they like end of support because realistically, Frank, I'm going to go buy a new laptop. You know what I mean? The laptop I have is probably a little dusty, a little beat up. Realistically, I'm going to get a new laptop. So the OEMs also benefit from this motion. And to your point, they bring out, more modern, as Microsoft likes to say, a more modern workplace. Shout out quickly to our community sponsors. As you know, what we try to do with MSP Tech Talk is attract well-behaved, well-trained sponsors that support our BBC or National Public Radio type format of real content, graciously underwritten by some community sponsors. And so our friends at Skykick here in Seattle, lovely building down on Lower Queen Anne overlooking the water. Haven't heard from Skykick as much in our community lately, but they're back. And what's interesting is with the Skykick migration suites, this is the perfect webinar to give a tip of the hat to Skykick, and the webinar they are having in just over a couple of weeks, June 13th on a Thursday at 10 a.m., 10:30 Pacific. The link's on the side. We're going to email this to you, but consider this a follow-up to the end of support conversation because this is purpose-built tools to help with migrations, especially Exchange email and some others. So, and then of course our long-term friends, Fortinet, taking it to the streets and SMB on the security front. So Frank, back to you. Let's talk about your article, and I did a couple of pull quotes. So first of all, where can people search for this article? Forgive me, I did not put the URL. I know if they kind of search on your unique name, you dropped the article 2 days ago. Where's the article, and what's the 10,000-foot view on the article? Then we'll go to the pull quote.
All right. Well, the article can be found over at Channel Partner Insight, a channel-focused publication. And, you can just search on my name. It's also currently on the front page of the site right now because it's getting a lot of traffic and a lot of interest because it's bringing up some critical points. And, from the 10,000-foot view is that, all right, end of life is coming for Windows 7 or end of support is a way to put it. And people are aware of it, but I don't think people are aware of the urgency around it because, people look at this as, okay, I got to upgrade. Yet, the process to upgrade, especially in the enterprise space, can be very, very intensive depending upon what other applications are being run.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen people submit their retirements. When you talk, Frank, in the old days, we used to call those conversions. And I worked my way through the later part of college, and we did a conversion from a Boulder, Colorado timeshare facility just to date myself. And people took early retirement. I don't I don't think it's that bad anymore, but boy, howdy, it's disruptive. Over on the left, we have a pull quote where you talk about the disconnect between expectations and reality will become more magnified as the deadline draws closer. So if you don't mind, let's double click down on that because I have some, well, I'll lead. When I read your article and I pulled that quote, I will tell you this, sir, that I went whole hog with Windows XP migrations, and people forget 5 years ago, last month, mid-April 2014. Don't ever get old, folks. And Frank, I know where we're in each other's, circles and realms, but you may or may not recall we tried a labor market play called WindowsXPMigrations.com, where the whole idea was that we could take our audience, the SMB Nation partners and MSPs, who maybe have a little excess capacity. So, maybe this holiday weekend, they're not stuffed with a migration while everybody's out of the office, and they could work 3 days. And that was the idea, Frank, is if I called you and I said, hey, Frank, in your area up on Long Island, we have a healthcare facility, so we have a compliance issue, number one. And Frank, would you and your team like to work 3 days putting in new laptops with Windows 8 at the time, today Windows 10? Would you like to assist in that? Do you want to make a little bit of coin? Frank, I'm assuming you might say yes if you were in that line of work. We went whole hog. I think everybody was disappointed by the sector momentum, for lack of a better word, with Windows XP migrations. It was not the same hype and excitement and ultimately lit down as Y2K. We kind of thought it would be Y2K. It was not. And so, Frank, what we saw, to get to my point, was there was heightened awareness and anxiety as the deadline drew closer for mid-April 14, but a lot of people didn't even start having the conversation until mid-April 2014. So that's what I took from your article here. Do you want to expound upon, expectations and reality, maybe what you were kind of thinking as you wrote this?
Well, if you look at the past upgrade models or ways upgrades have been accomplished, a lot of tools come on the market. I mean, Microsoft offers a lot of tools that are supposed to ease the upgrade process. And I think a lot of people are kind of expecting, oh, they're going to find a way to make this easier for us. But, the past has shown that that is never the case. So people have this expectation that, all right, this migration is going to be easy. We're only going from 7 to 10. And we only have to be concerned with, certain things because, the drivers are compatible and this is compatible and that's compatible. When the truth of the matter is there are always exceptions to the rule. So no matter how compatible you might think an application is, you're going to come across those that just will not work under the new environment. And that brings you into, this area where you've painted yourself into a corner where, all right, this new application is not working in the new environment. How do I resolve this problem? Do I have to go back to Windows 7, or do I have to put all sorts of resources into trying to resolve this problem, which might be using, the compatibility wizard or things like that. But it is time consuming, and people do not take those exceptions to the rule into account. Other things that have changed between Windows 10 and Windows 7 include, the way the browser works. If you're, going to use Edge as opposed to one of the other browsers that are out on the market, the whole security infrastructure with, notifications, elements like that, that's all changed too. A lot of the things that you were able to do from the GUI are now command line only. So there's a lot of things that have changed that are really under the hood that people, the traditional users of both Windows 7 and Windows 10 don't see that. They won't realize that until they actually try and go through that upgrade process. And that's when reality is going to strike people. They're going to be, hit over the head with, all right, I waited to do this till now, and it's just not working.
Yeah, and let's go to your quote over on the right, which you were kind of touching on a little bit. Everything relates to everything. Again, going back to my investment, for lack of a better word, because it was both capital and time in the Windows XP migration.com era that we had. We sold, Frank, what we were selling, and at the end of the day, I'm not sure people were buying, so that's a critical point. And Frank, we were looking globally, right? I mean, I was helping Microsoft OEMs, so these were big numbers with a lot of zeros after them, okay, that we were trying to, lift and shift and do all sorts of things. And with we basically had two lines of reasoning, or at least out of the gate, we had two lines of reasoning. We rolled with the security TV ad that you often see where the bad guy's out the door and you better get the new Ring camera or he's going to rip off your car or your package on the porch. So we kind of rolled with the security scare tactics and home alarm sales approach. And then the other thing we rolled with, which is probably a better message, was compliance. Because that one, people got if they were in healthcare, financial services, and some other fields, they got that. But you're talking about the lack of urgency to complete the upgrades and the perception of value. Frank, and with all due respect, but I'm predicting that there will be less enthusiasm for a Win 7 to Win 10 motion than we saw with XP to Win 8, because you'll recall that there was a hell of a lot of messaging on XP, man. And I'm just not seeing the same level yet of messaging.
Well, I think one thing, when you look at the Win XP to Win 8 move, or the ideology around it, Windows 8 was not that great of an operating system.
I know.
It introduced so much angst and upset people so much, and changed things just enough to make it, difficult to use. It was a new concept, and that alone drove people to want to stay with XP. They were like, okay, this works. It does what we need. And, the whole third-party vendor ecosystem was offering the promises of, oh, we can keep Windows XP secure, or, oh, we can still meet your compliance needs with XP, just run our firewall or run our security product or our endpoint protection, and XP will be fine. And a lot of people listened to that message where they went, all right, if XP works for me now and it will be fine with these other products, why should I move to something that will just upset the apple cart? Because that's what Windows 8 was all about. It made such changes in how you interacted with the system, and it just was not the way to go for a lot of people because of the learning curve and the other challenges that Windows 8 introduced into the equation.
Yep. Hey, Frank, we have a couple of questions. We have a real go-getter out there in Kathy Muller. And Kathy has a couple of observations, couple questions. So she says, extensions will be available for 2008 R2. Can you tell us if Win 7 will also have extensions available? Frank, in your research, and I understand you were writing more from a channel partner point of view, are you aware of extensions, either software-based, fixes or time extensions?
At this point in time, no. Microsoft seems pretty adamant about making Windows 7 go away. There's support for it, and I think there's a lot of reasons behind that drive from Microsoft. First of all, they want to get people over to Windows 10 for reasons of making it easier for the company to support a single operating system. Second of all, there's this big push towards the cloud, and Microsoft is starting to push out desktops as a service based upon Windows 10. So there's an argument there for that. All right, if I have to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10, why don't I just move completely into a hosted desktop via Azure in the cloud and avoid having to worry about hardware switching out or anything like that? I think that's kind of one of the underlying factors in there. I think some of the other things that are driving it is that Microsoft wants to help people move more over to cloud-based services. So let's say you're running SQL Server, in your environment. Hey, isn't now the time to go over to SQL Server under Azure as opposed to running it on-premise? With this move from Windows 7 to Windows 10, there's a lot of ancillary other things that can be accomplished. And Microsoft has a bit of a challenge there because, if they make it very, very evident about these ancillary things, people are going to think of it, oh, this is just a sales pitch from Microsoft. But yet, if they don't mention the benefits that these other services or these other styles of IT operations bring forth, people aren't going to know about these advantages. So what is probably the simplest way to do that? Just make what people are using go away.
Yeah. Hey, Frank, couple more Kathy Muller comments. And these aren't necessarily questions, but a patch is a patch is a patch. Amen. That amen was mine. Already subscriptions, so she would be speaking towards the Windows 10 and a Microsoft 365 world or desktop as a service. Again, amen. Next comment, she says, productivity slump for many businesses for training in addition. Now, I'll take that one. Let's talk about that, because that was the great hope of the Windows XP migration era. Is I was working internally, and the idea was partners can always revisit training and maybe add, and I truly believe this, but maybe add 10% more revenue annually if they just raise their hand and build training into their service offering instead of just, being the old-timey server-side, big iron person where you come in, shut the door, and do your thing. So yes, training is, I think, the hidden jewel of all of these migration-type motions. And for whatever reason, Frank, our audience, they don't wake up in the morning thinking about training services. And a 10% bump, man, we're talking a 2-week vacation or maybe an upgrade to the car. Seriously, Frank.
Yes, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, training is a big opportunity, but training is also a challenge. I mean, you have to look at, from the point of view of how tech savvy the folks are that you're dealing with. Now, if you're taking training from the point of view of that you're training their IT support people, as to this is what's different between, one operating system to another, and these are the tools, techniques, and tricks you need to know to smooth it over, that's a much easier training accomplishment because those people have a vested interest in knowing what's new so that they can support their end users. Now, if you're dealing directly with end users, they're like, all right, training is mandatory. I have to know how to use this. But realistically, what they care about is the applications. And if you look at, what Windows 10 is, it's just really a platform to deliver applications nowadays. So, will those applications change because you went from Windows 7 to Windows 10? Probably not in most cases, especially if you're using, software as a service applications, hosted applications. Salesforce is going to work the exact same way. Office 365 is going to work the exact same way. So when it comes to a training opportunity on that side, I don't know if it is as evident as it would be for the end user as opposed to the help desk employee.
Yeah. All right, Rodney Knight provided a link, the Windows Life Cycle Fact Sheet. Thank you, Rodney. Folks, if you want to check your chat window over in your control panel, typically to the right, and go to webinars, so lower chat, and you'll see the link. I posted that, so thank you, Rodney. Jeff Jeff says, are there any tools that make the migration easier? Well, so first of all, Skykick is your friend on email and server side, and then LapLink. So PC Mover, and this is an interesting story. Seattle-based LapLink was originally best known back in the day for the cable connection between the Macintosh and PC world. They're still around, and they're still our friends. And so PC Mover, again, a product from LapLink, is that's what they do. That's what they do. Now, it's good and bad. Frank, to your point earlier about revenue models, in my friendship with LapLink, and I, I don't want to see them be successful and be around another 20, 25 years, but they charge on a, it's essentially a one-time fee to use their tool to perform the migration. And that's a revenue challenge for ISVs that don't have the as-a-service mentality. So I can assure you the good people over at LapLink are working on that, and they're kind of extending their engineering into Azure and some other things. But Jeff, I hope that answers your question. Take a look at our friend Skykick, who's sponsoring today. Also a non-sponsor, but still our friend would be LapLink with the PC Mover. Frank, do you know of other tools people might consider for a Windows migration?
Well, let's look at this from the 10,000-foot view of where you might be as a service provider. Let's say you're a managed service provider. Odds are you're using something like Iterion or ConnectWise or ServiceNow or one of these ITSM management suites that provide remote monitoring and management along with scripting capabilities. I can tell you dollars to donuts here that those folks come out with scripted methodologies to ease the migration, and of course they'll sell them to their MSP customers, but that then becomes something that you can build revenue on top of. So you can take into account that these automation tools are going to come out, and they're going to be available through these surface automation platforms. Oh boy, I choked on that.
I have those words too, my friend.
So, from that platform approach, they're going to offer ways to be able to remotely script and execute migrations. And I think for anything larger than 50 seats, you're going to have to go that route. You're going to have to use an automation tool to make it possible. On the flip side, Microsoft, of course, offers several tools to ease migrations, but you usually have to kind of stitch those together yourself, or you have to do a bit of research, or you have to go for some training, or you have to, pick, the best of breed tools, whether it's third-party tools, Microsoft tools, or other even open source tools to kind of build a methodology to do a migration. Now, truth be told, when it comes to migrating an OS, there are some challenges, but that migration is probably less difficult than like migrating something like Exchange, or let's say Server 2008, which we'll be talking about a little more in a few minutes. But
yeah.
So there's going to be plenty of tools available. What's lacking is the wherewithal to do the upgrade.
Well, Frank, I go so far as to say, and I'm probably going to watch our viewership numbers plummet after I say this, would be our audience, they're also Luddites. And so not everybody, not everybody is on board with automation and tools. And I'll just leave that hanging out there. But hey, Kathy Muller, could you please retype your question on Google? I'm not sure I understand. With all due respect, I'm not sure I understand quite what you're asking, and I'd like to get it straight. Jeff Goff is back. Jeff, who asked the migration tool question, he says, if you were to upgrade 100 existing PCs to Windows 10 on a weekend, what would be a good estimate of the time per PC or overall to do it in your experience? Ooh, Jeff, I will take that upon myself. I'm gonna bounce after this webinar over to LapLink and get an estimation from them, because they are going to know the time and motion study. And boy, I'll tell you this: if I'm working with 100 existing PCs, I'm for darn sure using a lot of the automation tools that are available. So I do not know time per PC. Frank, don't mean to put you on the spot if you want to hit that one head on.
I would add that there's other factors. How fast is the connectivity? Are you on gigabit Ethernet in the environment? How fast are the PCs? Is there enough space in the hard drives to accommodate the upgrade? Where you have to start first with is doing a full inventory of everything to understand what you have in that environment, because you might be dealing with PCs that might not even be Windows 7. They might be older than that. So you're going to have to take that into account. You're also going to have to look at what applications are on those PCs, because some might need settings changed, or they might need a reinstallation done. You also have to take into account, are you moving from 32-bit to 64-bit? So what I would suggest is that the way you approach it is you do a pilot project of doing 5 PCs, 5 different PCs. Approach that as a pilot project, find a few victims, do those first to run into, any challenges that might occur wholesale in the environment. That will also give you an idea of what it takes per PC. You also have to look at it from the point of view of, do you have any type of a remote support product installed, in the fact of just something as simple as, can you remotely reboot the PC? And because you could script a lot of the upgrades, and you can even make it as part of a login script where you just tell the user, all right, log in on your computer before you go home tonight, re-log in, and it runs a script, and you might need to do some remote reboots of the system. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but the most important thing to do is to start with a pilot project to make sure that it's feasible and possible.
Yep. Yeah, you're actually, unbeknownst to you, touching on some observations from Daryl Roberts. Daryl, I'm going to get to yours. Let me get back to Kathy Muller. So hang in there, Daryl. You got some good observations. Kathy has rewritten her question so I can understand it. Thank you. And she says, it's really an observation. And Frank, you of all people are, I have both let's just say I have a marriage with Microsoft at some level, and marriages are complicated. I'll just say that because I live here in Seattle. Frank, you're much, much better about G Suite and Zoho and so on, some other, other players. And so Kathy asked, this is for you, Frank. Google G Suite users get updates piece by piece, for example, contacts, calendar, email, T-sheets, etc., gradually, and gives free training to all users so employers are not disrupted like Microsoft often does. So Frank, let's open this up to a broader industry conversation. You've spent some time with Zoho. First of all, do you agree with Kathy, and then add your own value?
I agree with Kathy to an extent. I mean, when the conversation is talking about applications, especially hosted applications, that is pretty much the norm out there. As applications are, they evolve gradually, not wholesale major changes. And we can thank that. We can put a lot of thanks in the agile development process for that, or the whole DevOps ideology, where you rapidly make changes and deploy them out, and you slipstream them in, and you just make the users aware that, hey, you have these new features. If you want to, go through everything again, we're more than happy to help you to go through everything again, or you just need to be aware of this. And that is a key differentiator when you have a hosted solution as opposed to something that's on-premise. On-premise is very difficult to do that. I mean, it's difficult to do that with an operating system, as we've seen with Microsoft with their Patch Tuesdays, and the pushing out their updates for Windows 10. That although it's supposed to be minor changes and enhancements, every single one, there's always a problem somewhere. It might only affect 5% of the users out there, or it might affect more of them. So when you look at it from that point of view, anything that you're going to do that requires on-prem resources is going to be much more difficult to do a slipstream update. Also, you have to look at the the economy of scale here. When Google does a minor G Suite enhancement to one of the G Suite elements, there are literally millions of people out there that are kind of testing that. And they are very quick to realize if there is some sort of a problem because, people shout about it. There's also people that are members of a beta program, which can look at these new changes and enhancements before they go mainstream. These are things that are very difficult to do with an on-prem solution. I think that's one of the biggest challenges there. But to shift the conversation back to, what we're talking about right now, the Windows 7 to Windows 10 migration, there
Yep.
isn't going to be a way to take an individual PC and just give it pieces of Windows 10 to slow the change. You can do it with maybe a smaller group of users. You can pick one department and say, okay, this weekend you're going from 7 to 10, and then you focus your training on those folks and then break it down into manageable chunks like that. But you're not going to get that, agile type DevOps ideology on a desktop operating system.
Yep. Daryl, I'm going to take your question now because it does still kind of relate to Windows 7. Folks, stick with us. We're about to move to Server 2008, but these are relevant to 7 primarily. So Daryl Roberts asked, and Frank, I'm going to try to answer it first, and then I welcome your input. What Daryl says, what is the 50,000-foot view of the problems needed to be solved? I like that. Is it that when upgrading the OS, number 1, apps need to be reinstalled, and so we need the inventory. Number 2, the user profile needs to be recreated, backed up, and restored. I'll stop there, Daryl. I know you have some other things. And so, again, my experience is this. We did, boy, it's scary how long ago that was. Certainly 10 years ago. But we did a product review for LapLink to move people from XP to 7. So that was some time ago, and it wasn't, because we had a deadline. It was more just desirable. And we ran their product through the ringer, and it was actually pretty cool, Frank. You'll relate to this, like the undisclosed room I'm in that looks like Hacker House. Myself and a couple of SMB Nation employees, we went to the Thai restaurant, got some food, and kind of pulled a late-nighter, just playing around with this and making a little video of it. And I'd be hard-pressed to find the video. But, Daryl, we took my son's gamer machine, a gaming machine, because we wanted a real-world computer from, a kid in school. And boy, howdy, are they good test lab dummies. And gaming in particular was a fairly intensive application area that you kind of got to get right. Plus the user profile. So we want to make sure he could see his dog as the wallpaper. And it worked. I mean, I was impressed. And that was the toughest test bed we could find, was a gamer. Because, Frank, it's one thing to be sort of a secular businessman who plays by the rules. But, boy, how do you get a junior high school kid who's a gamer, and they don't mind crossing the yellow line. So that's my experience. Frank, I don't know if you want to add on. The question again was 50,000-foot view of the problems that need to be solved with a migration. That's the core question.
Well, the problems, that we've pointed out, from first off is having that inventory. The second problem is, what is the upgrade going to accomplish? Why are we doing the upgrade? Is the upgrade because that we're losing support and security patches for Windows 7? Or is the upgrade because we have a new requirement or a compliance issue? Or is the upgrade due to new hardware being deployed? So you have to look at each of those use cases from a different point of view. So when it comes down to things such as user profiles, most of the tools, the better migration tools out there, account for that. They take that into account, and they integrate with Active Directory to be able to pull that information and all the metadata about it around so that when you go to the upgraded operating system, it is able to shove that information back in and convert it to whatever new format is required. Applications, what should be done there is compatibility should be judged beforehand. Will this application work with Windows 10? If it will, without any real hassles, which most of them will, can you just migrate the application? Which there's technology out there that uses something called, they try to align it with like the DNA of the computer. What is the DNA? Let's capture the DNA of that desktop and move that DNA into a new desktop, or a new operating system. So you have to look at it from what the migration tools are capable of. Some migration tools are very, very good at looking at all the, major applications like, Office 2010 or desktop, other desktop applications. And they're very good at looking at those and pulling across all the important elements and putting either that Office 10 with its license onto the new desktop, or concurrently upgrading to a later version of Office. So, you have to look at it from that point of view. So you have to build this matrix where you're looking at what you're trying to accomplish, identify what your line of business applications are, and identify what the impact is going to be through that process. Again, I can't say it, loud enough. Pilot projects.
Yeah.
Do a pilot.
Yeah, fair enough. Daryl, your question regarding promotion and demotion with the old domain controllers. Daryl, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, go to Facebook and join our group. It's called You Grew Up with SBS If. I'll repeat, You Grew Up with SBS If. And if you could copy and paste that into the group, where wiser minds are going to be able to help you more with the procedures. Frank and we fancy ourselves scholars and sippers of whiskey and fine cigars, but I'm not sure that I want to get you to the experts on the actual keystrokes with your question. Kathy, I get it. Employees hate change and resist it. Generally, I get it. All right. Let's get back on track, folks. Let's talk Server 08. And so what I did for this section is, again, not so much to get into the procedures, but more to have a conversation from what people are talking about with the 08 migrations. And, the SMB Nation audience at its core is a technical audience, and there are better, faster resources on procedures. So what I want to talk about today is more the conversations that are going on. And I went over to our friend Spiceworks, and Frank, I often see you at the Spice World Conference in Austin, Texas in October.
Yeah.
They are cool. I do like Spiceworks. I wish they'd give a little more love to the MSP community, but that's a whole other conversation.
They're starting to, though, actually. I've had that conversation with them, and they're starting to look at it a little more seriously.
Okay, because they have been, nobody owns the IT pro community like Spiceworks. I'll give them that. So the conversation on the board right here, right now, is migrating from Server 2008. What are the biggest hurdles you face? They only had 24 votes, so folks, I wouldn't take this as extremely predictive. That is a small sample size. I over here, I am a Scratch analytics guy. But if you look at the categories, and I do think this is relevant. So first and foremost, the biggest hurdle is time. Makes sense to me. Second, cost of software and hardware. Fair enough. Application compatibility. Kathy, shout out to you on organizational resistance. Kathy Muller was pointing that out. And then finally, the new licensing model. So let's take it from the Frank, you know, again, you're an analyst and you kind of live in this thinking. The one thing even rich people can't buy is time.
That's very, very true. But, you know, when you look at it, when the folks that, you know, responded to this survey, you know, you have to look at it from the point of view of time. Do they mean time as in man hours, or do they mean time as in, oh, support's coming to an end in 8 months? If they're looking at it from a point of view of man hours, you can always increase man hours by increasing staff or turning to your local solution provider to help you with that migration. So
Yeah.
time is kind of a almost a non-tangible measurement in this context.
Cost of hardware and software. So I'm working with a team at Microsoft, and they are starting to roll out right now at the enterprise level, but I'm going to have more interface with them in the second half of calendar 19. That's actually their fiscal year. It starts July 1st, so it'll be the first half of their 20 fiscal year. It's their basic modern workplace, all-in-one solution surrounding Microsoft 365, aka device as a service. And Frank, again, I don't know if you've double-clicked into that. I've had the chance to take a look at it. And in the financials, I'm on the cost of software and hardware. So the financials are as a service. So let's just pick a number. What if we said for $25 a month, you get everything, including the hardware. So you're going to get the laptop from the participating OEMs today, and a shout out to Lenovo for hosting us recently at Lenovo Accelerate. I'm on a Lenovo, so you're going to get a new Lenovo. You're going to get the insurance for the hardware, thank you, and you're going to get upgrades to the hardware as well as the operating system and the software. That's a given. And again, I'm just going to say $25 a month. Don't hold me to it. And Frank, I like that reset in economics right there, that for a reasonable amount per month, you know, I'm already used to $100 a month for my mobile phone, right? I've already been trained. That's how I see mitigating the 25% of the people that are concerned about the cost of software and hardware. This essentially amounts to a paradigm shift. Frank, any thoughts?
Quite a few thoughts. You know, we're both MBAs, and we know all about Capex versus OPEX. Here, the conversation is we're shifting from Capex to OPEX. What it comes down to, operational expenses. Most businesses and most users are used to the utility model. You pay every month for electricity. You pay, you know, for your water. You pay for all of these things based upon consumption. Now, where we run into a little bit of a difference here is you look at how do you consume a PC or the services on it, and how do you translate that into, you know, either your total cost of ownership or your return on investment. That's where I think, you know, the bean counters are going to come into this. Now, from a small and medium business perspective, if I could shift my expenses from a standard rate that happens every month as opposed to an unknown yearly expense, I would find it a much better way to predict and plan and how to budget for the business. Now we can go even one step further into this idea of moving into this managed model. Here we're talking about Server 2008. You know, you're running Server 2008 on premise. What does that require? Well, you got a file server or multiple file servers. You've got the electricity that you need to run it. You've got the hardware support. You've got the software support and all that. What if that just went away and it became something in Azure, where all you had to worry about was the management aspect and you were charged by the user? It becomes a much more predictable expense, and you don't have any surprises with that expense. The whole idea there is that you've shifted from something that's Capex and potentially unexpected Capex, because you don't have to deal with, all right, oh, my hard drive failed. Either I'm down in time, which impacts productivity, and I have to buy a new hardware and have a new hard drive and have it installed, or I have to wait for the warranty service or this or that. Time is money. Something like that goes away when you move completely into this cloud offering. So I think it is a paradigm shift. And I think the only thing that's going to hold back is people's sense of security and privacy when it comes to services like this. How safe is my data in the cloud? How safe is the traffic traversing the cloud? Do I need end-to-end encryption? Can there be any man-in-the-middle attacks? Can anybody in, the Azure, one of the numerous Azure data centers, get to my stuff? That is where the balance is going to be, how comfortable you are with the model and what is driving it behind from the areas of compliance and whatnot.
Yep. Others, we've kind of talked a fair amount about application compatibility. We've certainly talked about organizational resistance, and then licensing issues. Let me check the questions. And Kathy, you are on fire today. My goodness. So we have observations about basically echoing, Frank, some of your comments. What about the fear of hacking online? Thank you, Kathy. And then you lose data and you're out of business. That's actually, Kathy, an interesting point. A shout out to a client we're working with, if you guys like. Search for Waterdog Computer Works out of the Philadelphia area, Bucks County, outside Philadelphia. We're helping them right now with a campaign for a lunch and learn. And if you go to their website, so waterdogcomputerworks.com, and what we did with the campaign, Kathy, you'll like this, is we rolled with direct mail, an oversized postcard that posed a question about what is your data worth? And then you had to go to the URL to find the answer. And we did some basic math on a per hour basis. And I don't have it in front of me, but I believe and this part of the campaign was set up a couple months ago, forgive me, but it amounted to 3x. I believe we rolled with 3x your hourly payroll. So if you're a small business and your hourly payroll is $300 an hour for people running around, what we're saying is a data loss, or the downtime is 3x that. So if you're down for an hour, it's $900 with lost sales, the madness of getting back up, and so on. So we actually address downtime, forgive me. Data loss, well, the price could be infinite, but really good observations. Here we go. Rodney Knight saying, what's your data worth? And the answer is the cost of your company. That's pretty cool. That's a good one.
let me throw one.
Frank, go ahead.
We talk about, the security of your data in a hosted environment. People that are hosts, like whether it's Azure or Google Cloud or even AWS, invest a lot of money in keeping things secure because of the liability that they encounter. And I'll give you a good example. If you look at all, the spate of ransomware attacks that have gone on over the last year, almost every single one of those ransomware attacks originate on-prem systems, not in cloud-based systems. So if you wanted to make the argument that, how safe is your data, you can say that, well, I'm more likely to be hit by ransomware in an on-prem environment than I am in a hosted environment. And there's a reason for that. These hosted environments incorporate real-time security analytics that look at the data that's moving across in their data centers. where they are able to identify ransomware attacks much more easily than an on-prem solution can, because on-prem solutions need to be updated constantly. They need to be either patched or have new signature files or things done to them daily, if not more frequently, to be aware of the latest type of attacks. In these large data centers and these hosted providers, those type of updates are done in real time. Soon as there's any type of an indication of that there's a new attack in the wild, they try to incorporate what is needed to prevent that attack from spreading. Where an on-prem solution, you might have to wait for your next virus signature update or something like that to deal with that attack. It's just one of those points that folks could use if they're running into resistance trying to sell a hosted solution because of a security concern.
You know, Frank, I like the way you think. I guess we have a bromance going on because, and we do have fun when we get together. I'll just leave that hanging out there. But one of the things I've been helping this week, you know, I like you as analyst, candlestick maker, bottle washer, etc. I've been assisting a local college, Bellevue College, probably the closest two-year, four-year college to the Microsoft campus. And at the two-year level, Frank, a lot of times the curriculum are trade school, vo-tech oriented, right? Like, you know, do the work, right? And the Washington State has a unique situation where two-year colleges can now pivot to be a four-year college. And then you get more up into what you were just talking about. And our audience, I don't have to sell this audience, but you have to have the context of what the hell's going on, right? Not just pushing buttons. Hopefully, you can be the dreaded overused term of yesteryear called the trusted business advisor. We rode that term hard.
Yep.
But I just wanted to give a shout out because, you know, like you as an analyst, you see a lot of things, and you talked about your Dallas conference. I resemble that. Now, I see things in different ways than you, like helping a college is different than going to a conference. But that's the world we live in, and it's all part and parcel to the conversation we're having. This isn't just bit twiddling with throwing out the migration. Hey, let me go back to the peanut gallery on the questions, and Kathy, thank you. Accounting in the tax business. CCH was hacked in April and had to shut down 4,000 users. CCH, Kathy, help me out. I'm assuming that's an accounting firm. I go back to what they call the Big Six, and they all change. I think
CCH provides software, hosted software for accountants for them to process things.
Okay, yep, and she's kind of confirming that. Okay, see, that's why we love you, Frank. Folks, before we're at 1:08 p.m. Pacific, please fire out questions that you have. I have a couple of things I have to do and go get answers. As I promised on some of the questions. I do want you to think about throwing your more technical procedure questions up on Facebook in our group. You know you grew up with SBS. It's about 800 active users who are chomping at the bit to fight, argue, cry, and laugh and hug. With that said, let's move on to the book, and then we'll go to the screen for final questions. Quick update on the book.
Yeah,
go ahead, Frank.
Can I just address the CCH issue? I just wanted to point out one thing with that. CCH is a software as a service provider, which is very different than an infrastructure as a service provider. When you're using Azure or when you're using Google Cloud or AWS, you're in control of your own infrastructure. And you're the one that is providing the security and making sure things are safe. When you turn to a pure, software as a service provider, you're relying on them to keep things secure. So you're giving up some of that control. So that CCH issue doesn't kind of fit into what we're talking about with migrating your server into the cloud. That's more of migrating a desktop application into a service, which is somewhat different because you do not have full control over what's going on. That's all I wanted to throw out there. It's a different use case.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought CCH was the letters on the jerseys at the Lake Placid hockey game, the Miracle on Ice, back when it was the Soviet Union. It was the Soviet Union. Kids won't get that. They only think it has been Russia. But I thought CCH was the common use for that jersey in hockey. But let's move on. Folks, quick update on the book. I wanted to give you a funny visual. This morning I drew the short straw. Jenny went on strike, and I had to go ship out the overnight book orders. So the book is here, present, accounted for. We just recently got a digital copy to Frank to look. Frank, you got some time Memorial Day weekend reading, my friend? And
I've actually looked through it somewhat, and it's an interesting read, especially this vertical market that you're talking about.
Exactly. We're trying to push you guys. Frank, we're not here for the book, but bottom line is, my audience was asking me, what the heck do I do now that small business server's gone? It's a very simple question. And I have a book that talks about the fastest growing vertical in North America for Memorial Day. If you want to go to the site, you feel the book fits, I will sign each copy with a personal note. And when you sign up at our site, you will get a discount code. Just for giggles, the book is under 2 pounds, 476 pages, showing it on the camera. And I always end on this, that the book is actually free. Here's the book. The book is actually free. Frank, you just have to pay for the pages. So we'll leave it at that. Final thoughts. Let me go back to the questions window. Where are the free copies? Kathy asked. Kathy, here's your free copy. All you got to do is just type out all the pages. I couldn't resist. And I think we have cleared the deck on, let me just scroll down. I think we've cleared the deck. So, Frank, any final thoughts? Sir, you're the man of the moment. You dropped a piece 2 days ago on this exact topic. So I appreciate you clearing the deck to be our guest today on Windows 7. We're going to provide a link to that in the thank you note. So, Frank, you're going to take us out.
Okay, very good. I just want to say that, this upgrade, this need for this upgrade is coming. It's going to come quicker than people realize, but there are options other than just going from Windows 7 to Windows 10. There's the option of, investing in new hardware. There's the option of going into a hosted desktop solution. There's also the option of looking at, other alternatives. If you're in an environment such as where you're using mostly hosted applications, maybe it's time to give Linux a shot. So I'll just leave that out there.
Oh boy, I'm going to revoke your visa to visit Seattle, but
hey, even Microsoft loves Linux now.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Folks, have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for not only supporting the SMB Nation community. It employs a handful of families, but if you could give a look at Skykick. They have a webinar coming up in a couple weeks, and as well as our friends over at Fortinet in the security realm. Frank, you too, sir. Get out those whites. You're on the East Coast. It's time to get out the whites with Memorial Day weekend.
Yep.
And go promenade, my friend.
Yep.
All righty. Have a great day.
You too. And everybody, thanks for joining us.